I never thought I'd be living with the woman who once threatened to call the police on me for parking in her spot. Yet here I was, helping Diane carry her boxes into my spare bedroom, both of us avoiding eye contact as we navigated this bizarre arrangement. If you're wondering how your most annoying neighbor could become your roommate, and eventually something more, stick around. This story might just change how you think about the people who drive you crazy. If you're enjoying this journey of unexpected connection, hit that like button and subscribe for more real, life stories that remind us second chances sometimes come in the most unexpected packages. The first time I met Diane Reynolds, she was standing in the hallway of our apartment building, arms crossed, face pinched into what I would come to know as her signature look of disapproval. I had just moved in, and apparently, I had committed the cardinal sin of leaving my empty moving boxes in the hallway overnight. "Those are a fire hazard," she said, not bothering with a hello or an introduction. "Building code clearly states that hallways must remain clear at all times." I was exhausted from moving all day, but I forced a smile. "I'm Alex. Just moved in. I'll get those out of the way first thing tomorrow." "Tomorrow could be too late if there's a fire tonight," she replied, then turned and walked back to apartment 4B, directly across from my 4A. That was 3 years ago, in the time since Diane and I had perfected the art of neighborly animosity. She complained about my music. I grew irritated by her habit of lingering in the hallway whenever I had friends over, as if monitoring for noise violations. She left passive-aggressive notes about the proper way to sort recycling. I deliberately mixed paper and plastic just to annoy her. We were the definition of incompatible neighbors. She, a 40-something high school English teacher who valued order and quiet, me, a 32-year-old graphic designer who worked from home and occasionally needed to blast music to get through creative blocks. Our interactions were limited to terse nods and the occasional dispute over shared spaces. So when I found her sitting on the floor outside her apartment one rainy Tuesday evening, surrounded by hastily packed bags and crying silently, I nearly walked right past her. Nearly. "Diane." I stopped, keys in hand. "Are you okay?" She looked up, mascara streaking down her cheek, and I was struck by how different she looked without her usual composure. Vulnerable. "Human, I've been evicted," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The building's been sold. New owners are renovating and doubling the rent. I have nowhere to go." I shifted uncomfortably. "Don't you have family or friends you can stay with?" She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "My sister lives in Phoenix. My friends all have families. Small apartments." She trailed off, then straightened her shoulders. "I'll figure something out. I just need a minute." I should have said, "Good luck," and gone into my apartment. That would have been the natural conclusion to our antagonistic relationship. Instead, I heard myself say the words that would change everything. "You could stay with me until you find a place. I have a spare room." The look of shock on her face mirrored exactly how I felt. Had I really just invited my nemesis to live with me? "That's not funny, Alex," she said, her voice hardening. "I'm not joking," I replied, surprising myself further. "It's just temporary, until you find something else." She stared at me for a long moment, suspicion evident in her reddened eyes. "Why would you help me? We hate each other." I shrugged. "Hate's a strong word. We're just different. Besides, nobody deserves to be out on the street." 2 hours later, after much hesitation and negotiation of terms, Diane Reynolds was officially my temporary roommate. The first week was excruciating. We moved around each other like wary cats, establishing territories and schedules. She was up at 5:30 a.m. every day, making what sounded like every possible noise in the kitchen before leaving for school. I worked late and slept in, which she clearly found morally questionable. She labeled her food in the refrigerator. I pretended not to notice when she rearranged my dishwasher loading, for efficiency. "Your coffee maker is disgusting," she announced one morning, holding up my beloved but admittedly crusty machine. "When was the last time you cleaned this?" "It adds flavor," I replied, scrolling through emails on my phone. She made a sound somewhere between a scoff and a gag, then proceeded to disassemble and clean every part of the machine. I wanted to be annoyed, But when I tasted the coffee afterward, it was noticeably better. Thanks, I muttered. She nodded curtly and retreated to her room. By the second week, we had established an uneasy truce. I learned that Diane graded papers every evening at the dining table, reading particularly bad sentences aloud with theatrical dismay. She discovered that I wasn't actually a slob. I just had different priorities when it came to cleanliness. Countertops and bathrooms were spotless, floors and general organization, not so much. "How can you live like this?" she asked one day, gesturing to my home office, where sketches and reference materials covered every surface. "Creative chaos," I explained. "There's a system to it. There's the system total disorder. I know where everything is," I defended. "Besides, this is my workspace. It's off limits to your organizational crusade." She raised her hands in surrender. "Your career, your choice." The third week brought the first real crack in our mutual defenses. I was on a tight deadline for a major client, working through the night on a campaign that wasn't coming together. At 3 a.m., frustrated and caffeine jittery, I was ready to throw my computer out the window. Still up. Diane appeared in the doorway, wearing flannel pajamas and looking surprisingly normal without her usual perfect posture and stern expression. "Can't sleep?" I asked. "Heard you cursing at your computer." She leaned against the doorframe. "Thought you might be having a psychotic break." I laughed despite myself. "Just a creative block. This campaign is due tomorrow and it's garbage." She hesitated, then asked, "Can I see?" I was too tired to maintain our usual boundaries. "Sure, why not? Fresh eyes might help." To my surprise, Diane pulled up a chair and studied my work with genuine interest. More surprising still was that she had insightful feedback. "The message feels disconnected from the visuals," she said. "What if you tried a more direct approach? These images are powerful, but your text is dancing around the point." "You know about advertising?" I asked skeptically. "I teach teenagers. I know when something isn't connecting." She shrugged. "Also, I minored in communications before switching to education." We spent the next 2 hours reworking the campaign. Her perspective was different from mine, more structured, more direct, but it complemented my visual approach. By dawn we had something that was actually good. Really good. "Thank you," I said sincerely as she finally headed back to bed. "You saved me." She smiled. A real smile, not the tight-lipped version I was used to seeing. What are hostile roommates for? Something shifted after that night. We still annoyed each other. She still complained about my music. I still rolled my eyes at her rigidity. But there was a new undercurrent of respect. We started eating dinner together occasionally, discovering shared interests in true crime podcasts and obscure documentaries. She helped me organize my tax documents. I showed her how to use design software for creating more engaging classroom materials. 1 month turned into 2. Diane mentioned looking at apartments less frequently. I found myself in no hurry to reclaim my spare room. My sister called again. She said one evening as we washed dishes side by side, "She wants me to move to Phoenix." I felt an unexpected pang at the thought. "Are you considering it?" She passed me a plate to dry. "I don't know. I've lived in this city my whole life, my job is here. But housing costs are insane now." "You could stay," I said, focusing intently on drying the plate. "Here, I mean. The arrangement is working, isn't it?" She looked at me surprised. "You'd want that?" I thought this was temporary. It is. But it doesn't have to be. I put down the towel. "Unless you're dying to get away from my creative chaos." "Your chaos has grown on me," she admitted. "Like mold." I laughed. Such a romantic way with words. The word, romantic, hung in the air between us, unexpected and charged. We both looked away quickly. "We should formalize the arrangement," she said, practical as ever. "Split utilities properly. I can pay more rent if. We'll figure it out. No rush." That night, lying in bed, I found myself wondering when exactly Diane had transformed from annoying neighbor to person I wanted to keep in my life. The realization was unsettling. The tension that had been building between us came to a head on a rainy Saturday in April. We were both home all day. A rare occurrence given our different schedules. I was working on a personal project. She was deep, cleaning the apartment with an intensity that suggested emotional displacement, rather than a genuine concern for dust. Do you have to vacuum right now? I called out after the third pass by my office door. She appeared in the doorway, vacuum in hand. Some of us like to use weekend daylight hours productively. I am being productive. I gestured to my tablet. Creative work is still work. Drawing cartoons is hardly the same as actual labor, she said dismissively. I felt a flash of genuine anger. Those cartoons pay the rent that's keeping you off the street, so maybe a little respect would be appropriate. Her face flushed. I pay my share now. And I didn't ask for your charity. No, you were just sitting in the hallway crying, but sure, you didn't ask. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Diane's expression shuddered, and she turned away. Diane, wait, I'm sorry, called after her. No, you're right, she said, her back to me. I was pathetic, and you took pity on me. Let's not pretend it was anything else. She disappeared into her room, the door closing with a decisive click. I sat at my desk, feeling like the world's biggest jerk. After an hour of staring at my screen and getting knocked on her door. No answer. Diane. Please. I was out of line. Silence. I'm going to keep talking through this door like an open up. More silence. Fine. The truth is, I didn't help you out of pity. I helped you because even when we were at each other's throats, I respected you. You stand up for what you believe in. You don't compromise your standards. You're infuriating and impressive all at once. And these past months, living with you, I've seen so many more layers to who you are. You're funny and smart and surprisingly kind when you think no one's looking. So no, it wasn't pity. It was. I don't know what it was. But it matters to me that you're here. The door opened. Diane stood there, eyes red-rimmed but dry. You think I'm impressive? She asked quietly. Terrifyingly so, I admitted. A small smile tugged at her lips. Your work isn't just cartoons, it's art. It communicates. I shouldn't have dismissed it. Apology accepted if mine is. She nodded. I'm not used to needing help, or having someone see me at my worst. If that was your worst, you're doing pretty well, I said. My worst involves 3-day unwashed hair and talking to my houseplants. I've seen the plant talking, she said. It's actually endearing. We stood there, the air between us charged with something I couldn't quite name. Then, without warning, Diane leaned forward and kissed me. It was brief, almost tentative, but it sent electricity through my entire body. She pulled back, eyes wide. I shouldn't have done that. Why not? I asked, still processing what had just happened. Because it complicates everything. Because I kissed her back, cutting off her list of reasons. This time, there was nothing tentative about it. When we finally broke apart, she looked as dazed as I felt. This is a terrible idea, she whispered. Probably. I agreed. Want to do it anyway? She laughed, a free, unguarded sound I'd never heard from her before. God help me, I do. The transition from roommates to whatever we were becoming wasn't smooth. We had our first official date at a restaurant downtown. Both of us awkward and overly formal, as if we hadn't been sharing a bathroom for months. We returned home and fell back into our comfortable patterns, relieved to be past the performative dating rituals. That was weird, right? I asked as we settled on the couch with wine. So weird. She agreed. I kept thinking I should tell you about myself, but you already know I sleep in socks and alphabetize my spices. And I already know you snore when you're really tired. She gasped in mock offense. I do not snore. Diane, the walls aren't that thick. She buried her face in her hands. This is mortifying. I gently pulled her hands away. It's actually perfect. We've skipped all the pretending to be our best selves part of dating. We've seen each other at our most annoying, and decided to do this anyway. She considered this. That's actually romantic in a strange way. I'm a strange guy, I said, leaning in to kiss her. Thank goodness for that. She murmured against my lips. Our relationship developed in reverse first, then dating, then falling in love. It wasn't conventional, but neither were we. Diane was still Diane, structured, principled, occasionally infuriating. I was still me, creative, disorganized. Sometimes too laid back. But we balanced each other in ways I never could have imagined. That first day in the hallway. 6 months after she moved in, temporarily, I found Diane looking at apartment listings online. Find anything good? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual while my heart sank. She closed her laptop quickly. Just browsing. If you want your own place, I understand. Though I didn't understand at all. Things had been good, great even. At least I thought so. She was quiet for a long moment. I should want my own place. It would be the sensible thing. Since when do we do the sensible thing? I sat beside her. Talk to me, what's going on? She took a deep breath. I'm afraid. Of what? Of how much I love being here. With you. She looked at me, vulnerability plain on her face. I've never felt this way before. It terrifies me. I took her hand. It scares me too. But not as much as the thought of you leaving. What if it doesn't work out? What if we end up hating each other again? Then we'll have some spectacular fights and go our separate ways. I said. But what if it does work? What if this unlikely backwards, completely unplanned relationship is actually the best thing that could have happened to either of us? She smiled slowly. When did you become the optimist in this relationship? When you became the risk-averse one. One of us has to balance the other out. She closed her laptop decisively. No more apartment hunting. No more apartment hunting. I agreed, pulling her close. 1 year to the day after Diane moved in. I took her back to the hallway where we'd first met, where I'd found her that rainy night when everything changed. What are we doing out here? She asked. Confused. I took both her hands in mine. This is where it all began. Where the most annoying neighbor I'd ever had became the most important person in my life. Her eyes widened as I dropped to one knee. Diane Reynolds, will you officially, permanently move in with me? As my wife. Tears filled her eyes as she pulled me to my feet. That's the most ridiculous proposal I've ever heard. My heart stuttered. Is that a no? It's a yes. You idiot, she said, throwing her arms around my neck. Of course it's a yes. As we stood there in the hallway, laughing and crying and kissing, I thought about how life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes the person who drives you crazy is exactly the person you need. Sometimes, the worst day of someone's life, like being evicted.
As we stood there in the hallway, laughing and crying and kissing, I thought about how life rarely goes according to plan. Sometimes, the person who drives you crazy is exactly the person you need. Sometimes, the worst day of someone's life, like being evicted, becomes the first day of something beautiful. Our wedding was small but perfect. We held it in the courtyard of our apartment building, with the blessing of the new owners who had inadvertently brought us together. Diane's students decorated the space with paper lanterns and wildflowers. My clients and colleagues handled the photography and design elements. Her sister flew in from Phoenix, surprised but delighted by the unexpected turn her sister's life had taken. I never thought you'd end up with someone so relaxed, she whispered to Diane during the reception. I never thought I'd end up with someone who color codes their closet, I countered, having overheard. Diane squeezed my hand. We're still figuring it out day by day. And we were. Marriage didn't magically resolve our differences. She still thought my approach to deadlines was too casual, I still thought her need for structure was excessive. But we'd learned to appreciate the balance we brought to each other's lives. Her organization made my creative business more successful, my spontaneity brought joy and adventure to her carefully planned existence. 6 months after our wedding, an opportunity arose that tested our newfound harmony. A teaching position opened at a prestigious school in Boston, Diane's dream job in many ways. Meanwhile, I was offered a creative director position at an agency in Chicago. We could try long distance, she suggested one night as we lay in bed, both of us staring at the ceiling. We could, I agreed, though the thought made my chest ache. Or one of us could compromise. I don't want you to resent me for holding back your career, she said quietly. And I don't want you to resent me for the same reason, I replied. We spent weeks in a state of tension, researching both cities, weighing options, occasionally snapping at each other from the stress of it all. The old patterns of antagonism threatened to resurface as we both dug in our heels. Then one evening, as we sat at opposite ends of the couch, laptops open to job listings and apartment rentals, Diane suddenly closed her computer. "This is ridiculous," she said. "What is?" I looked up, expecting another argument. "We're acting like these are our only options. Either/or. Your dream or mine." She moved closer to me on the couch. "But what if we created our own option?" "I'm listening," I said, setting my laptop aside. "What if we started our own business? Something that combines your design skills and my teaching background? Educational design, curriculum development, something we could do from anywhere?" I stared at her, amazed. "That's actually brilliant. But it would be risky. No guaranteed salary, no benefits package." "Since when are you worried about risk?" she challenged, a spark in her eyes. "Isn't that my department?" I laughed. "You're right. Who are you, and what have you done with my risk-averse wife?" "She fell in love with a chaos-embracing creative and learned a few things," Diane replied, leaning in to kiss me. "So what do you think? Partners in life and business?" The idea took root and blossomed quickly. We spent months developing a business plan, combining Diane's educational expertise with my design skills to create innovative teaching materials for schools and online learning platforms. We called it Reynoldston Educational Design, a name that still makes me smile when I see it on our office door. 2 years later, our business was thriving beyond our expectations. We'd moved to a larger apartment with a dedicated office space, hired 2 employees, and were fielding more client requests than we could handle. Diane had found her calling in curriculum development, while I discovered that applying my creative skills to education was deeply satisfying. "Did you ever imagine this is where we'd end up?" I asked her one night as we celebrated landing a major contract with a national education publisher. She shook her head, smiling. "Never. I thought I'd teach high school English until retirement, grading papers every night and complaining about noisy neighbors." "Speaking of noisy neighbors," I said, "Mrs. Abernathy from 6E left another note about our excessive typing sounds during her afternoon nap time." Diane laughed. "Some things never change. There's always someone who thinks the world should conform to their preferences." "You mean like someone who used to leave passive-aggressive notes about recycling sorting?" I teased. She threw a pillow at me. "I've grown as a person. Mostly. Thank goodness you haven't changed completely," I said, pulling her close. "I fell in love with that uptight, rule-following woman, after all. And I fell in love with a disorganized creative who taught me that sometimes, the best things in life don't follow a plan," she replied, resting her head on my shoulder. Life continued to surprise us. 3 years into our marriage, we welcomed our daughter, Lily, an unplanned but joyful addition to our family. Parenthood brought new challenges and revealed new aspects of our personalities. I discovered an unexpected streak of protectiveness and routine following when it came to our child. Diane revealed a playful, spontaneous side I'd only glimpsed before. "You're letting her finger paint on the kitchen floor?" I asked one day, returning from a client meeting to find our toddler gleefully smearing colors across a plastic sheet. "It's washable paint, and she's having the time of her life," Diane replied, her own hands covered in purple and green. "Besides, creative expression is important for cognitive development." I shook my head in wonder. "Who are you and what have you done with my wife?" She grinned. "She's evolving. Just like you are, Mr. I need to sterilize all the bottles twice." We laughed, both acknowledging how we'd grown and changed together, each adopting bits of the other's approach to life. As Lily grew, our business expanded further. We developed an award-winning series of interactive educational materials that combine traditional teaching methods with innovative design and technology. Schools across the country adopted our curriculum, and we began receiving speaking invitations for educational conferences. "Not bad for 2 people who once couldn't agree on hallway etiquette," Diane remarked after we delivered a keynote address together at a major education technology summit. "We still can't agree on hallway etiquette," I pointed out. You still think shoes should be removed at the door, and I still think life's too short for that level of fastidiousness. Yet somehow, we make it work, she said, squeezing my hand. 7 years after Diane was evicted and reluctantly moved in with me, we bought our first house, a charming Victorian with enough room for our family, our business, and the occasional disagreement about organization versus creative freedom. We designated spaces that were Diane zones, meticulously organized, and Alex zones, creatively chaotic, with shared spaces that represented our hard-won compromise. The day we moved in, I found Diane standing in the empty living room, a thoughtful expression on her face. Having second thoughts? I asked, setting down a box. She shook her head. Just thinking about how far we've come. From enemies to roommates to this. She gestured around the space. Our home. Our family. Our life together. I wrapped my arms around her from behind. All because you got evicted and I made an impulsive offer. And I said it wasn't funny, she remembered, leaning back against me. It wasn't funny, I agreed. It was the best decision I ever made. She turned in my arms to face me. Even when I reorganized your spice rack alphabetically? Even then. Though that was a dark day, I teased. Even when I critiqued your dishwasher loading technique? You mean when you showed me the objectively correct way to maximize space efficiency? Yes, even then. She laughed, the sound still my favorite in the world. I love you, chaos and all. And I love you, structure and all, I replied, kissing her softly. That night, as we lay in our new bedroom, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and the gentle sound of Lily sleeping down the hall, I thought about the strange, winding path that had brought us here. From annoyed neighbors to reluctant roommates to business partners, parents, and spouses, each step unexpected, each transition marked by tension that eventually transformed into something beautiful. What are you thinking about? Diane asked sleepily, curling against my side. About tension, I said. How the friction between us, the very things that made us clash, eventually became our strength. She nodded against my shoulder. Like opposing forces that balance each other. Exactly. We're better together than we ever were apart. Even though I still think you use too much water when you brush your teeth, she murmured. Even though you still fold t-shirts with a ruler, I countered. I don't use a ruler, she protested. Much. We fell asleep laughing, secure in the knowledge that our differences, once the source of so much conflict, had become the foundation of our unlikely but perfect partnership. Life isn't about finding someone who's exactly like you. Sometimes, it's about finding the person who challenges you, frustrates you, and ultimately completes you in ways you never expected. Sometimes, the most unbearable tension becomes the most beautiful connection. And sometimes, when your annoying neighbor gets evicted and you impulsively say, "Move in with me," it turns out to be the beginning of the greatest love story you never planned. If there's one thing I've learned from my journey with Diane, it's that the people who drive us crazy might just be the ones who drive us toward becoming our best selves. So the next time you find yourself in conflict with someone, remember our story. That tension might be unbearable now, but it could be transforming into something wonderful that you just can't see yet. Life's most beautiful chapters often begin with the words, "This is a terrible idea." But sometimes, those terrible ideas turn out to be the best decisions we ever make. If you enjoyed this story of how tension and differences can transform into love and partnership, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us that sometimes, the most unexpected connections become our most treasured relationships. Remember, the person who annoys you today might just be the one who completes your life tomorrow.